Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome back to the Resonym Indie Creator Spotlight Series. I am here with HTTPaladin, a good friend of mine. So first off, Paladin, you asked for a more casual chat and less of an interview. So chat, this is going to be a little less formal than some of the stuff you're going to be seeing later this weekend. It's going to basically be me asking a lot of random questions that I've kind of always wanted to ask Paladin. Some of it will be Sina Una related, some of it will just be life related, and I'm actually really excited to have a more casual segment in this show. Just a quick overview for anyone who doesn't know who you are. Chat, meet HTTPaladin, the co-director and main graphic designer for the D&D 5e compatible book, The Islands of Sina Una. This TTRPG book is inspired by Filipino mythos and successfully funded on Indiegogo in December of last year, I believe, around that time. Is that the right month? I think it is. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
It ended on like the third day of December.
Okay, so technically I'm right.
Yeah, technically, which I think that's kind of right.
I've gotten the pleasure of getting to know Paladin over the last year or so, and it's been really fun to watch him take off. So thank you so much for joining me today, Paladin. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to give a more eloquent description of the Islands of Sina Una than what I just gave, in more detail, whatever you want people to know about the book, would you want to go ahead and do that real quick?
Yeah, sure. Like Ray said, it is a 5e compatible setting book for D&D based on pre-colonial Philippine mythology and culture. It requires a lot of effort and a lot of research, and at times I want to yell a lot.
But that's honestly, we were chatting about this a little bit before we went live. I really appreciate games and TTRPGs in general that aren't afraid to be a lot of work, that aren't afraid to like take that plunge into asking a lot out of their players back from them. Because I know how hard it is to have such like a lifelong passion project is so hard, and I love when people aren't afraid to ask a lot of their players back. So that's something that I really appreciate about the book in general.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I guess the first question is the big broad one. How are you? How have you been doing lately? How has life been treating you lately?
Well, aside from the obvious,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, okay, I suppose.
Yeah.
Working a whole lot more these days than I ever have before. Not to make a slight against anyone because this isn't a slight, but I did the marketing for Sina Una, and people know I'm a graphic designer. And out of the blue, people were approaching me to do writing for them.
That's awesome. That's
It's
great.
so surreal.
Oh my gosh, that's something I want to chat with you about later. Is like the writing versus graphic design, and like which of those you like to do more, want to do more in the future. But it's awesome that you're getting like offers. That's the start.
Mm-hmm. It's just weird because like when I graduated high school, for a while I was trying to make it as a freelance writer and got nowhere. Now after you're doing graphic design and marketing, all of a sudden I can be seen as a writer. It's a weird place to be, honestly.
That's interesting. Do you like what are your feelings about that in general, about having this kind of like blowout success and getting all this attention for this book, and now your other work that you've been trying to push for a while is finally getting noticed? Is that like a complicated relationship in your mind for you?
No, it's just kind of funny.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you have that mindset about it.
I could be like very conflicted about like, oh, you only like me when I'm like this, huh?
Yeah.
But like that seems very time consuming, and I don't have much energy.
It's not
these days.
worth it, honestly. Like sometimes it just happens and you gotta just run with it, especially in such a weird industry as TTRPGs and board games in general. Sometimes you just have to go with it. I mean, I kind of lucked into my position as well, and I'm kind of just like, I'm here now. And you have to, at least for me, it's something that I've wrestled with a lot, is telling myself that I deserve to be here if you did like get a position by like a weird or unconventional means. And I don't know if that's something that you wrestle with at all, but I know that's something that I personally struggle with. Because this industry is just weird. But there also is no conventional means to like be successful in TTRPGs and board games. It kind of just, it is what it is in this weird nebulous way.
I got into the main two pieces of work that I did early on with TTRPGs via Twitter.
Yeah.
I have no idea how to feel about that still.
Yeah. Just let it, just go with it, At least that's what I'm trying to get over and teach myself, is to just, be happy with where you ended up and not obsess over how you got there necessarily. So yeah, well, congratulations on, being in a place where people are approaching you. Like that's a cool spot to be in. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So one of the first questions I have is kind of loosely related to Sina Una, but talking about the obvious situation and stuff that's happening in the world right now. My question for you was, how has Do you feel that having Sina Una as a thing you can work on, has that helped or hindered like your mental health during like COVID and lockdown? Because I know I kind of have a complicated relationship with like work, but sometimes work can really save you when there isn't a lot else to do. And I was just kind of interested in how Sina Una has helped or hurt, or what that relationship with lockdown has been for you.
Well, naturally, I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
Prior to going to conventions and being seen on the internet, I was nobody. Literally, no one knew who I was. I had a group of friends I spoke with, but other than that, no one really knew about me online.
Yeah.
So, being at home, working on a computer, not really interacting with people, that was my norm a
Yeah.
year ago.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So, like, working on Sina Una while at home was just, oh, I'm working on something that's a little bit happier now.
Gotcha. So
So it's the transition hasn't been hard at all for me.
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've experienced kind of a similar thing where I've been working remotely for a while now, so it's kind of like this is just normal, and just everyone's experiencing it too, so now everyone else is like stressed out as well. But yeah, no, that's very interesting. I always find work and mental health, like relationships, very interesting. And right now we're in such a weird time. I was just interested in how that's affected it. Um, and then in general, because Sina Una has been such a long project, my next question is, how have you dealt with like the burnout, or have you experienced burnout working on one project for so long? I'm really lucky that like I get to kind of be working on multiple projects at once. And Sina Una, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, has kind of been the main focus of yours for over a year now. I was wondering if you, what your experience with burnout is, and if you have any like tips or tricks to deal with burnout that you've like acquired.
Um, so any person on my team will say that I will yell a lot, not like in
Okay.
a bad way, but just like they'll teach me something new that kind of is so strange to me. I can't help but be like, you know,
Yeah.
just kind of give a very shocked reaction. 'Cause that's the only emotion I can feel.
Hmm.
But sometimes they'll we've been in the middle of a quarantine, we've been in the middle of a pandemic,
Yeah.
and someone will say, "Oh, sorry, I don't think I'll be able to make this deadline," and I have to respond with, "We pushed the deadlines back, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you're fine, we're fine, we're cool."
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be on their case a lot about this thing from Japanese culture called kantoshi,
Mm-hmm.
which is death from overworking.
Mm-hmm.
I have this
Oof.
very big fear that someone might see me as some kind of taskmaster, make them forfeit their health for the
Yeah.
book. And
Right.
that's not right.
Right. Right.
So my experience with burnout has mostly been like helping the people I work with avoid burnout.
Yeah, that's very impressive. I mean, it's hard enough to do that for yourself, but being able to be in a position where you can help other people with that is really impressive. Yeah, I saw in the latest Sina Una update that the release of the book got pushed back a little bit for like art reasons and stuff, and
Mhm.
I'm really glad that you took that opportunity to give people more time. And it is one of the blessings of being like an independent creator, is you do get to it's a blessing and a curse, because sometimes you make too much work for yourself, but you also do have that freedom to give yourself and give the people you work with like that leeway to do their work in a healthy manner. So that's something that I hope all your backers appreciate as I do.
We haven't gotten any flack for it, so I
Good,
think they're all okay with it so
good.
far. Um, for us, was mainly we set out. We had this schedule. We had this plan. We were giving our team plenty of time to write. We were going to get art. We're going to sell dice and get more of our art
Wow.
budget for our book. And then COVID.
Yeah, yeah, and it
COVID
also
happened.
like pushing projects back. Luckily, is people are relatively used to it in like the Kickstarting Indiegogo like crowd. Like that is, people are used to creators taking the time that they need. So I'm just glad that you
Hmm.
guys did that. Like whenever I see people take the time they need, it makes me happy. Just from a
Hmm.
creator perspective, because burnout is just, I don't know, it's something that I've experienced firsthand and just tangentially a lot. So I'm glad that you guys are dealing with it in such a positive way. It's really good to hear. Um, and I guess I'm sorry. I feel like I'm hitting you with a lot of like the bigger hitting questions up top.
No worries. No worries.
But the next question was kind of zooming out a little bit. What have you learned about yourself, if anything, from working on Sina Una? About yourself, about your work ethic, however you want to take that question. I'd just be interested to hear your thoughts.
Um, Working on this, two things came to light. One of which was I really hated anybody seeing me as Asian.
Interesting. Interesting.
I sincerely hated anyone referencing my heritage or
Mm,
my culture mostly because I couldn't enunciate or talk about it in any coherent
Interesting.
manner.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Um, Growing up, my mother's only real way to show me culture was through food, which is cool to a certain extent.
right,
And like, if she tried to teach me any more, it would be through the lens of her faith, which is not really the culture,
right, right.
or trying to teach me a bunch of stuff that definitely felt like inherited from the Spaniards. And so it always felt a little bit off.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about Sina Una is that it's pre-colonial Filipino mythos. So it's
Mhm.
and which I think is really important to highlight. I heard you talk about this a little bit in Dragon Talk, but for people who maybe didn't listen to that episode, what has been your experience discovering or like rediscovering Filipino mythos and kind of reconnecting with mythos that you maybe didn't know about before? Like, what was that process like for you?
Hard, I
Yeah, I
guess.
bet. I bet. Yeah.
Really difficult. I did the marketing for Sina Una via Twitter. 3 days a week, I would make this very long thread talking about one aspect of the book. And at some point, I said the words, "If you can't recognize a part of yourself as being part of yourself, you don't really know who you are."
Ooh,
So getting into the culture,
interesting.
getting into my heritage, getting into
Yeah.
the mythology, was able to help me figure out who I actually am.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I love when
Yeah.
projects can also be an avenue for like personal growth. It's how I at least try to approach all projects, and obviously this one that's so personal and related to your heritage. Obviously was able to do that for you, and that's awesome. Go away, pop up thing.
The other thing that I found out was I really don't like taking breaks.
Ooh, I can relate. Ooh, yeah, I feel
Um,
you.
because like a friend of mine in high school, we spoke on the phone a few years ago. He was telling me about how one thing he always admired was how I always had something going on. I didn't really know what that
Ooh,
meant,
yeah.
but I I was talking with someone. We were talking about our projects, and they mentioned the stuff that they were working on, and I mentioned the stuff that I'm working on. And like, if you look at it on a list, like side by side, they had about 4 items. I had 18,
Yeah.
12 of which were just Sina Una. And it didn't phase me at all because I thought to myself, okay, I'll get done with this, and tomorrow I'll do this, and this, and this, and tomorrow I'll do this, and this, and this, and
You
after that I'll do this,
normalize it.
this,
You get in that like it's just oh yeah.
this. I got nothing else going on. I don't like being bored, you
Right.
know?
Oh, yeah. I can completely relate to that. I panic if I don't have a major project to be working on. I like don't have you found that like so you said that that was completely normal to you. Have you found like negative effects of that? Because I know for me, I found it really hard to enjoy free time, especially when I my job is kind of nebulous and there's always a thing that I could be doing. There's always a project I could be working on that I found take like as you said you hate taking breaks. I found that taking breaks and free time have been really hard. Are you like okay with where you're at with that kind of like work break balance, or are you hoping to like scale it back and be better at taking breaks?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, that's
I honestly
fine.
can't see because like I'll take time for myself
hmm
every other day or every day just to like do anything else but stare at a computer screen,
Yeah.
or from looking at a computer screen not looking at work stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll take time for myself. I don't play in my head of I should be working,
Mm, mm.
but it's just I prefer the work more.
Yeah.
But I know if I don't take a step back every now and then, I'm going to grow to hate it.
Right, the work isn't going to be as good, and then that's a bad cycle. But yeah, no,
Hmm.
that's super interesting. Um, yeah, I'm the same way. That all rings true very much for me. But also that in this space you kind of need to have that drive of loving what you do because you're the only thing kind of pushing yourself forward. And so it's definitely a matter of finding a balance between the two. Um, So we've talked about a lot of kind of like negative, not negative, but like heavy stuff. So my next question was more broad and light, which was just, do you have like a highest moment from this year that you can remember? It could be Sina Una related, like whatever. Just like, what was the high point of 20? Like, let's talk about some good 2020 stuff. What was the best moment
Sure.
of 2020 for you so far?
Uh, so I back in December of 2018, I bought the Beetle and Grimm Platinum box for
Mm-hmm.
Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and then I bought the Ghost of Saltmarsh box. And so when June came around and I got picked to work on something for the Avernus box, I was freaking out
Mm-hmm.
because I did work on Beetle and Grimm's Platinum box for Descent into Avernus.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah. As a kid, I was a very weird child, as
Hmm.
if I'm not a weird person right now, who desperately wanted a dog and didn't really know how to be okay being a weird kid in his class. People who were very, very much like Nickelodeon after school special kind of people.
Gotcha. I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So like watching Scooby Doo helped me out with that a lot, and so I got to meet, Matthew. I got to start working for Matthew Lillard on some stuff. I'm stumbling because my mouth is dry. One
Oh, you're
second.
fine. Go for it. We've got an hour, so we don't need to rush through this by any means.
For some reason, when my mouth dries up, I rush my words, which makes
Oh, me
everything so
too.
much
No, I know.
worse.
I know what you mean. It makes it worse. It's awful.
Mhm. It's a cycle, is what it is.
Yeah.
But I started doing some work for Matthew Lillard, and the first one of the first things we ever got out of the way when we first started talking together and working together was just getting all the "I'm just a fan of your work" stuff like right out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I didn't meet him at Gen Con. Met him very briefly at GameCon, but I went to Lost Odyssey because I got sponsored to go there by Dungeon Fog,
Hmm.
and I was there hanging out after else had left because I was allowed to be there afterwards because A, I was with the sponsors, and B, I had done work with Beetle and Grimm before, and they were a
Right.
sponsor as well.
Right.
Um, but Matthew Lillard was done talking with someone, looked over, saw me, and went, "Buddy, I didn't know you were here," and walked across the room to shake my hand. And I'm still riding that high a little bit.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my God. That's awesome. Oh,
The other high that I'm still kind of on constantly was I went to Gen Con last year,
yeah.
which is almost a year ago now. Oh my
It's
God.
yeah, it's a year ago as of next weekend. We planned this to be the weekend before Gen Con because we're doing Gen Con online. And the whole point of this was to have the more human aspect of Gen Con that we're not really gonna get
Right.
with Gen Con online, like actually talking to our friends and actually playing games, which is why I go to Gen Con. I mean, like we go to
Mhm.
sell games, but it's more like just seeing people. Like to me, it's such a home. Sorry, I derailed. But yes, we're very close to Gen
No
Con.
worries, no worries. But I was talking to different people, and every now and then they'd ask what I do, and I would mention I'm working on this book, and I have a thing if they were interested in looking at
I
it.
remember that you walked around
Yeah,
with that with that like book or folder, whatever it was, like the whole
yeah, a
weekend.
little.
I
Yeah,
never
I
saw you
did, I
without
did.
it.
Yeah, no, because like I was a man on a
You
mission.
were, which is
I
what
was
you
going to
need
talk to
to
you about.
be. Like,
But I almost everyone I spoke to who had been working on RPGs for a while said two things, and one of them was, A, I don't really know much about Filipino mythology,
hmm,
and then B, which was, but I've been trying.
yeah, yeah,
And I heard that from people in the indie scene. I heard that from people. I don't know if I'm not going to mention their name because I feel like it would be like a slanderous thing. But people who are working in a very long-term RPG company,
gotcha.
people they were talking about how they want, huh?
I said gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah. But everybody wanted to learn, and no one had any avenue to do so.
hmm,
And I understood kind of because at that point I realized, oh, this stuff is really hard to learn about because online resources are always hit or miss.
yeah,
And then I looked into the prices of books and I realized, oh, this is probably why.
yeah. The
Because of this
accessibility
massive like
and
cultural gatekeeping thing in terms of
yeah,
price.
yeah. You mentioned that on Dragon Talk, and it was so shocking to me to hear how expensive trying to get like cultural resources is. Have you since that interview have you unearthed anything more as to why that is, or it's just
Rarity, obscurity, importing from a different country,
yeah.
and because there's such a demand and so little supply, people are able to jack the prices just so much.
That's insane. It's insane. Well,
Hmm.
it's so wonderful that you've been able to make that mythos like accessible and also through gameplay. Because I find that that's for me. I love being able to use games to learn and teach. It's one of the big things that we try to do at Resonym, and I really commend you for taking on such a large educational topic and making it accessible for people who want to learn but don't know where to start or don't know how. So yeah, yeah, Gen Con in general. is always just a high, and it's just been so lacking right now. Like I'm so upset that I'm not like scrambling and unpacking and repacking suitcases and trying to shove our giant like 20 by 20 banner into my carry-on. Like that's where I was last year, and I missed that because that drive of like, is all of our stuff going to get there? Like every time we get there and there's some sort of box that we need missing, and I love that. Like they're honestly like, Max, if Max is listening to this, he's going to be so pissed because he's like, you started coming to Gen Con after we knew what we were doing. The first couple years were worse. But like just that, like I got to jump into Gen Con once we like had our shit down. But like just that's like, conventions just are always such a high because you get to connect with other people who love what you love. Like I remember my first Gen Con, I was brought on the trip with Resonym because Mary couldn't go, and they're like, last minute, we need a person who can stand and talk to people about games. And I went back to the hotel after the first day at Gen Con, and I just like cried on the phone to my mom for like an hour. I was like, I finally found a place that I make sense now. Like literally, I called her and I was like, I get myself now, because there's other people who like I literally was just like, I get emotional even thinking about it. I was just like sobbing because I was just it just is so special. And partly why I wanted to do this in general is to kind of get that feeling a little bit, tiny little spark of it, because I just miss it.
I've attended 4 conventions so far. Gen Con last year was the first one. C2E2 this year was the
Oh, I've never been
fourth
to
one.
C2E2.
It's fun. It's fun. It's not a whole lot of like RPG focus, but it's very fun. What am I allowed to swear?
You're allowed to swear. I've said shit twice. You're fine.
Cool. You know what fucking bites my ass?
Yeah.
I had arranged it so that between different works and sponsorships, I wouldn't have had to pay to go to any convention or show this year.
Oh, so
and I had
proud.
9 planned out.
Oh.
And then fucking quarantine. And then fucking stay-at-home order. And now the mask. And of all the things that have happened this year, I'm going to be eternally bitter
that
I
feels
didn't
so
go to
bad,
fucking
man.
anything this year.
Oh, that's awful. That's awful. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I was gonna write in my little like intro about you, like how we met, and I couldn't for the life of me remember. Did we meet at Gen Con or did we meet through Board Game House before Gen Con? And I feel awful that I don't remember, but I want to know what your recollection of this is because I don't trust myself.
We met at the neighborhood meetup.
Okay, that's what I thought. We met at Wormwood,
Yeah.
and I like vaguely.
What had happened? What had happened was I had been haranguing Derek about how off-cut his ribbons were and how awful they align with everything else.
Wait, now that you say that, I remember that. I remember someone saying that to Derek, and I think I remember Derek coming to me saying someone shat on my ribbons. And someone was like, Rachel, do they really look that like off-cut? And I was like, yeah, kind of. That was you.
That was me. If you look at some of the Worm Life videos on YouTube, on their Gen Con recaps, you can catch a little bit of me talking to Derek behind Doug of Wormwood. You can only hear Doug, but you can see me hand gesturing towards Derek and Derek taking off his glasses because he's crying while laughing at that point because he hasn't been able to breathe in like 5 minutes.
Derek laughing is my favorite thing ever. Like that is
so delightful.
It's just joy. It's just joy bursting out of him. And that, like, of all the things in the world that will always make me feel better is like going back and watching Board Game House clips where Derek's just crying from laughter. You always need someone like that in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Actually, so you were there at the neighborhood meetup at Gen Con. So remember how that one dude drank a shot before everyone else did?
Vaguely. Yeah. Vaguely. Oh yeah. Wait. Yeah. Everyone like yelled at them. I do remember that. I remember 2 things during the shot sequence. I remember various people trying to call Steven's shot because Steven doesn't drink, and there were people fighting over who got his shot. And then I remember someone took it early, and then everyone yelled at them.
Yeah. So like, not to out myself, but like, no. What no one sees is that like we're all handing our shots, and I'm sitting next to him, and he goes, "Are we supposed to drink these right now?" And I go, "I don't know, maybe." And so he goes, "Yeah, okay," and drinks it. And Bobby whips around and sees him taking the shot and goes, "Dude."
So this was Derek?
No. It was a guy named Jacob Grimoire.
Gotcha. Oh man, that's
he makes some wonderful art pieces.
I can picture Bobby just being like, "Dude."
Yeah.
Not cool.
Yeah, and it's my fault. Like if you look at the Worm Life where like he's being accosted by Bobby, I'm there like a few feet away going, Oh. Hmm.
Oh, the only clip from Worm Life that I'm in is of me like going up because the waiter was handing out. They had this basically for anyone who doesn't know the story that we're talking about. Go watch the Worm Life episode from Gen Con last year. This was the first Board Game House and Wormwood joint meetup that happened like Saturday night after Gen Con, which was really cool. It's like, oh my god, that was really cool getting to meet everyone whose screen name I knew in real life, and now it's kind of becoming an ongoing thing. But Bobby got on his Bobby pedestal and like got up on the railing, and was like, we're gonna get shots for everyone on Worm Life, and basically they just put out a bunch of random liquor that they had in the back and handed out all these shots, and they did a whole Worm Life shot of us all cheering, and we took a picture together and blah 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 blah. The only shot from that entire sequence that I'm in is me walking up to the tray that the waiters are handing out like a little gremlin, like trying to figure out which is which and like trying to find tequila because I don't really like any other hard alcohol, and I like it's literally a shot of me just going like this. And it's awful and I hate it and I'm so mad.
So you can see, like, remember back then I wore that red
Oh
bandana.
yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
I wore
partly
bandana
why
for
it
this
took me
time.
a while to like connect the dots of like I met you then and then I met you later, because like that was what I remember was the yeah, okay, yes, the answer is yes, I do remember this.
Yeah, nowadays I do this thing.
I love it.
Um, Thank you. But you in the Worm Life videos, you can only see like parts of my head or the back of my head. The only time you can see my face from anything that Wormwood captured on film or picture is during that one group shot.
Yeah.
If you look very carefully, you can see my face doing this.
Oh my god, I remember in that group shot I got to stand next to Doug and I was just so happy because I was almost as tall as he was, and that was just
Oh
really
my god.
was really validating for me. And that's all. I was just like, "Oh, I'm next to Doug and I'm almost as tall as you." Haha. um yeah. Wow, okay, I'm glad that we cleared that up because I could not remember. I thought that was the first time we met, but I wanted to corroborate that story because that whole night I met a bunch of people for the first time that night. Um
Hmm.
and then I remember you came back the next day and like I showed you Visitor or something. And yeah, and then we've stayed friends ever since, and it makes me happy. Huzzah, friendship, yay. Wow, I've got to go back and watch that Worm Life episode now just to make myself cry and just to make myself sad. I was combing through old Gen Con footage to make like a couple of promo videos, and it just gets me. Like, I don't know, man, Gen Con's just special, and I love it. Someday we will get to go back, someday, but
Hmm.
obviously not right now.
When it's
Um,
safer.
yeah, when it's safer. I don't want to go anywhere near a convention right now. So even if it was still
Oh
going,
yeah.
I would not be there. Absolutely. Like
Hmm.
con crud is one thing. Like I get sick after every convention because my immune system is just trash, and I always have to like take the next week off because I'm always just like heaving. It's awful. Um, but yeah, okay. I got all thrown off track. What's a good next question? Hmm. Oh, I have a lot. I'm gonna finish my kind of Sina Una branch of my questions, and then I'm gonna
Sure.
ask you some dumb questions. And I apologize. So real quick, we've kind of talked about it a little bit with like being able to rediscover your heritage. But if there's something either elaborating on that or something different, I was just wondering what you consider to be the most rewarding part of this project, and then also what has been the most challenging part of this project. Which is a big question. And we've kind
Um.
of if it's just gonna like rehash what we've already talked about, that's fine. But I just wanted
Yeah.
to give you that opportunity.
Um. The most rewarding part about this has so far been um I studied this stuff for about a half year before we brought more people onto the project.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest time, it was me, main director, an artist or two, and our two researchers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we brought more and more people onto this. And every writer who isn't based out of the Philippines had the same sentimentality of, this is so cool. I've been wanting to learn more about my heritage, but my
Oh.
parents are talking.
Mm.
And that's like we have a writer and art and an artist in the UK. They have the same sentiments. We have writers in America who have the same sentiment. Just everyone had this thing of, I never knew. I always wanted to learn, but no one ever tell me. Not even my parents. The
That's
hardest part
crazy.
has been our parents don't talk about this stuff ever.
Do we know why? Like, do you have a sense of why that is? Um,
Cultural,
could you like elaborate on like what
sure.
aspect like what that means, just for people who don't know?
So older generations don't talk about like the cultural stuff, pre-colonial stuff. Um, for different reasons. Sometimes it's out of fear of like invoking some kind of jinx or some kind of curse. It's like if you talk about Bloody Mary in front of a mirror, you'll call Bloody Mary.
Interesting. Okay.
That thing of
Yeah.
if you talk about it, you're going to bring on some bad luck. Some people feel some sense of shame over it.
Interesting.
Some people just don't know.
That's super. Thank you for elaborating on that. That helps me contextualize it a little bit. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, speaking about like your team, how, because your team has grown a lot since since I understood it was you and Lucia, and how did it grow? And also like how did you find Mackenzie? She's someone who I got to playtest Sina Una with, who's just awesome. And I kind of just want to know
Oh
how you
yeah.
found each other, and also how Lucia found you. Like how, and is it still like how up until how recently have you been adding writers? Because I feel like it's grown a lot since I last knew about it, but maybe it was this big from the beginning. I'm just kind of interested in how that snowballed.
So so Lucia found me on Twitter.
Yeah.
She put up this thing saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a graphic designer. Anybody know anybody?" And I followed her because of her dice, and I was like, "Hey, I'm a graphic designer." Um, it was a job to redo her logo.
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
get the job. I didn't get the job.
Oh no,
I
really?
did not. But a few weeks
Brutal.
later, she emailed me saying, "Hey, do you know anything about like making numbers? I want to get some custom numbers for my dice." And so
Okay.
when you look at her dice nowadays, the numbers that she has are that's the first thing I did for her.
Interesting.
Uh, and then in May, she said, "Hey, I'm working on this book about Filipino stuff for D&D. Would you be interested?" And my mind thought, "Yeah, I could use some money."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so far, it has consumed and made my life better.
Aw, that makes me so happy. So she
Um,
had the whole project like fully realized in her head before she brought you on, or
she originally the book was just going to be two classes,
okay. Wow.
monsters and some lore.
Yeah.
And around September, August, I was like, hey, if we only have this kind of stuff, it's not going to be really engaging for people to use. So we should think about maybe expanding it, maybe making some subclasses, magic items, spells, backgrounds, sub races, maybe stuff for players to use, because players are the main people who are going to be using this stuff.
Right.
'Cause player ratio to DM ratio is big,
Yeah, real big.
real big.
Yeah.
Um, but after that, we got into me doing the promotional stuff, and it was still just us and a few artists still. Then we hit December, end of funding. We took a small reprieve. I met Mackenzie at PAX U by total random happenstance.
Really? Oh wow, because
Yeah.
she, just from watching the two of you interact, you two mesh so well, and I was wondering if you like knew each other beforehand or something. Like I feel like I'm not surprised that the two of you work really well together. Because she's great.
Oh, she's wonderful.
Yeah.
But we met each other by happenstance at PAX U
Wild.
because I happened to spot James Hayek out in the wild.
Oh
And I was talking
shit.
with him. Yeah.
How
And
do you?
he's an alumni of her college.
Oh, cool. Oh man.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And so I met her then. And I was in the state of I had just gotten done with crowdfunding. And so I was a zombie.
Yep.
And Mackenzie had just finished up doing a bunch of DMing stuff. So she was in that post DM state. And we are like, hey, yup.
Oh.
Yeah. And so it was
Oh, I
some awkward
love that.
introductions.
That's such
And
a
then
wholesome meeting. I can picture that in my head, and I love it very much.
mhm. And after that, a few days later, I messaged her saying, "Hey, do you have like a resume I can look at?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure. Here you go." I said, "Okay, cool. I don't really like using Twitter chat. Do you mind if I add you on Discord?" She's like, "Yeah, sure." And like the first message I sent on Discord was, "All right, I'll be real blunt here. Do you want to be the lead writer for Sina Una?"
That, oh my god, she must have been pumped. Oh my god, that's so cool.
Sometimes when she tries to get across what it's like to work with me, she points to that, where I just go, "Hey, do you want to be lead writer?"
I would
Because apparently
die.
I'm a very blunt person.
Yeah, yeah, that I can see that. For sure.
Yeah. But we've just been working with each other nearly nonstop for the past. I'm looking at my calendar now to realize it's July,
Yeah.
8 months, 7 months,
Wow.
just nonstop. And thankfully we get along real well together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. As for our writing team, I got most of them in January-ish.
Okay.
Um, I put out this open call for a couple of days on Twitter, and for calling for writers for Sina
Mm-hmm.
Una, saying like, "Hey, I gotta see a resume, and you gotta be Filipino."
Mm-hmm.
I got like 120, 130 emails.
Really? That's
Um,
awesome.
some of which I had to immediately discard because people were calling me racist
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
for saying that it's only for Filipino people.
first of all, I'm not like I hate it, but I'm also like that doesn't surprise me because people are
Oh
shitty.
yeah, I fully
Like,
expected it because people are
yeah,
trash sometimes.
yeah.
Then I filtered it out through people who didn't send me a resume, but talked about how their work ethic is like.
Okay.
Where it's like instead of a resume, they'll tell me about their hardworking nature and how dedicated they are and how much they really love playing fifth edition D&D, which is cool and all,
Yeah.
but I have to know that you can write.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which was very awkward
Yeah, I've
response
never
email.
been in the position to like look at resumes before. I don't even know how, especially with that many. I don't even know what the process is for like going through and finding. Is it just like a gut feeling? Like what was it by committee? Like what was the process of finding the right people?
Um, it mainly came down to thinking if I could trust them or not.
Mm.
Because that's a lot to me. I
Yeah.
had sunk half a year already into researching this stuff.
Yeah.
If I was going to have people writing for this, they had to be people that I could like and
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
Um, from that 120, 130, I picked up like two people. I got some other people via recommendations from my researchers, people who they already knew and were worked with and could trust.
Mm-hmm.
And one person who is one of the best world building writers that I've ever met,
Yeah.
just from Twitter, because we were talking on and off about writing.
That's so cool. Like,
Yeah, and I got her just as she finished up her creative writing degree.
oh, awesome. Um,
Oh yeah,
so it sounds like the people that you hired had a mix of like some people had experience writing for TTRPGs and other people this was their first TTRPG that they'd worked on, or
yeah.
that's awesome.
The writer I just mentioned, this is her first TTRPG project.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool. That's awesome.
She had written her own homebrew world stuff, but
Okay.
nothing like published stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really matter because if your world building doesn't really apply to mechanics, you
Right.
know.
Right. For sure. For sure. Um, yeah, I think that is kind of the end of my Super Sina Una related questions. Um, so there's two that I want to go to, and I'm not sure which one I want to do. Let's go to this one because you kind of brought it up with the DM to player ratio.
Sure.
Which are you prefer? If you like could choose all the time, DM or player all the time?
DM.
DM. Okay, I'm the same way.
DM
I kind of
all the
figured, but
time.
I was wondering. Has that always been the case, or have like did you when you started playing TTRPGs were like I want to be the storyteller, like this is the role for me, or did you eventually someone like oh my god we need a DM and you tried it out and loved it? Like how'd you fall into the like
So,
always DM role?
so, so how it came to be was, I started playing D&D with third edition D&D, and my dad was my first dungeon master.
Oh wait,
Because
that's
he played
really
D&D.
cute. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. I love when I love when families like play games and introduce their
Well,
kids to that.
he
Makes me
played the
happy.
original D&D.
Yeah.
He even got to a convention and play with Gary Gygax for a time.
What? Stop it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Uh, and
Ah,
when I was 3, he raised me up on stories about him playing D&D. And when I turned 10, I started playing for the first time.
I love that so much. Oh my god.
Um, but it got to the point where he couldn't play because he had work. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to play, got some friends together, and we started playing. And it was here and there trading off who would be DM because like kids just want to play out different things.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where I was DMing all the time.
Yeah.
And for the first time in in a couple of years, I got to be a player, and I was like, this feels wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I got to be a DM again. I was like,
Ah, you just feel
oh,
better. You're just like I have power.
I'm home.
Yeah, I know the
I'm
feeling.
home.
Yeah, no, I've been working really hard on becoming a better player because I naturally want to be in the DM role. It just feels like home. I like it. I'm kind of interested in like what appeals to you about being a DM because I've heard like everyone obviously has a different reason why they love DMing. I know for me it's very much like ever since I was little, like I've always been like a giver. Like for me, it's very much about like I want to make a cool thing for my friends, and I feel very uncomfortable when someone's doing that for me and like building a story based on just my character. Like I really enjoy going home and like working out where my friends' characters are gonna go. Like that is something that is really enjoyable for me. But what is about DM for you that is like something that you love, as opposed to being a player?
Giving
Like yeah,
giving my players something new.
yeah,
I have been fed a steady diet of fiction and fantasy and science fiction since I was 3.
that's awesome. That's so cool.
So most of the tropes that I see people, repeating, I've already been through a bunch of times before.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say like I'm trying to brag or anything, but a lot of the conversations that people have about like how to DM better or how to world build better, about how to do the game better, I am so over
Yeah.
because I've heard them before. None of it is new to me. I'm just hearing it
Interesting.
from new people.
Yeah.
And I'm so tired of it and I'm very bored by it. I was
Mm-hmm.
in this Discord the other day and someone asked for world building advice on how to build a pantheon.
Okay.
And my advice for that was, well, figure out why your gods are there. Were they there first to make everything, in which case what the world is reflects what the gods are?
Right.
Or did people worship for a purpose or a thing, a desire or a fear?
Mm.
When you figure out why the deities are there in the first place, you can start to build your deities a bit more comprehensively.
Right. Right.
And then 20 people chimed in with, base them off the alignments and have a spreadsheet.
My heart. No. No, no, no.
And I
Your
was like,
deities are if depending on how your world is built, they're living things. Like they have motivations that are beyond just like this is the evil deity and he just likes to fuck shit up all the time. Like why? Like why is
yeah.
he here? Why does he care?
But like faith in the real world isn't arbitrary.
Right.
It's based
Yeah.
off of needs or presences that people feel.
Yeah.
And when you make your deities arbitrary, you aren't giving it a human touch.
Yeah.
And that's the only way we know how to tell stories. And if you aren't telling it with a human touch, you're not really telling a story. You're repeating something
Yeah.
that you think is cool.
That's very interesting. I don't think I've ever thought about that consciously before, but it's super true. Yeah, and the deities, from what I can tell from Sina Una, very much have that. I mean, they're based off real deities, but they have that human element to them, which is really important in making them feel real. Okay, let me see. Which one do I want to do next? Let's do. Yeah, so you kind of talked about how you were writing before Sina Una. Do you have a favorite project that isn't Sina Una that you worked on? Maybe it was never published or just like a passion project other than Sina Una that you're proud of?
I got a book series that just gathering dust right now.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Wait, tell me about that. I didn't know that.
Um sure. It was one
I
of
mean,
those
you don't
things that
have
like,
to. If you don't want to, you don't
no, it's
have
fine,
to.
it's fine, it's fine. It's not like I have to keep the god secret.
But
No, it's this pitch I've had. Um, the pitch for it has been a knight, a mage, and 2 thieves steal an artifact.
Mhm.
And that's the entire pitch for it.
Okay.
But I wrote this with the idea of I really hate how people do a lot of fantasy and how they don't really apply humanity to it, which sounds very grandiose and very bougie. I realize saying that out loud.
But I get
But
what you're
I'll read a
saying.
bunch, I'll read a bunch of fantasy stuff, and some authors will have this thing where they'll assume that their words have a certain weight to them, even though people are brand new to it, talking as if their words already matter and have weight and grasp to them. It's like Game of Thrones has this whole thing of there's some time spent just meandering and small talking and information sharing, and sometimes there's battles, but sometimes every now and then a character will have a very good monologue. And some authors write as if everything is that monologue.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Mhm.
I got you.
And so I went about that with that mindset of I don't like a lot of fantasy. Here's what I like. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I haven't submitted it anywhere because I'm giving myself like a couple more years before I look back at it and realize how bad it is.
I'm sure that's not true, but reflecting on your own
Maybe,
work is
maybe
always
not. I don't
important.
know.
Yeah. That's why you got to give yourself time and space from it and go back and look at it for sure.
The other thing that I have is I have this post-love novel
Okay.
where it's about 2 characters who used to be together, and 5 years after they broke up, they're trying to figure out some things in their life after finally reviewing the relationship in hindsight.
That's interesting.
And the back of the book that I hope, if it ever makes it to publishing,
Yeah.
I want the back of the book to say, this is so and so and so and so. They're not getting back together.
Ooh. Ooh. I like that. That
Hmm.
that's very interesting. Would this be so this is kind of a departure from fantasy. This is like a real world
Oh yeah,
contemporary setting.
yeah, fiction.
Very interesting.
I don't name a city. I name some characters, but it's this. Uh, I broke up with a girlfriend, and in the years since, as I've grown up and matured, I've seen the breakup in different lights.
Mm.
Uh, Sometimes very anguishing,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes very self-conflagratory, sometimes blaming her, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't fair.
Mm-hmm.
Like she can't argue back in my head.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's observing how relationships, as we get more and more distance from them, our perspective of them changes.
Yeah.
Because memory isn't 100%
Yeah.
reduction of facts. It changes based on how we feel about them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm. And so our remembrance of a relationship will change. And even if you recollect everything, it's only your viewpoint.
Yeah.
I remember one of her friends was super, super convinced that I was super abusive.
Mm.
But in reality, not talking about my ex like this, but my girlfriend at the time didn't like making her own decisions if they were minor,
Mm-hmm.
because if things went wrong, she couldn't take blame,
Mm-hmm.
which is smart but frustrating sometimes.
Yeah.
But because she defaulted to seeing what everybody else wanted, her friend thought I was being abusive.
Mm.
And we cleared it up, but like the fact that that kind of viewpoint can exist
Right. Right.
without me being aware of it, that no one really knows how the relationship is viewed by everybody.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to explore that a little bit too.
That's I hope that that sees the light of day at some point because I'd be very interested to get in your head more about that and see how that manifests in a fictional story as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So we've got about like 15 more minutes, so I'm gonna run through some of my last few questions. The first one is 5 years ago, where would you have pictured yourself? Like what was your career plan or path 5 years ago? If you can like get yourself back there.
Oh, God, 5 years ago, I was working at a movie theater.
2015, yeah.
I was working at a movie theater, and I pictured myself, let's see here, out in Seattle writing.
Nice. Well, you're not far off from that then. Kind of. You're doing
Yeah, the
creative
divine
work.
irony.
Yeah.
Yeah, divine
Um,
irony, really.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a good thing. I mean, like the fact that you've achieved somewhat like that, at least that creative lifestyle. Because writing in Seattle is a very aspirational, creative lifestyle choice, and the fact that you're on that path is awesome. Because usually that takes a lifetime to get to like that kind of point. So cool. Yeah. How was working at a movie theater, by the way?
Oh,
I did a
fucking
lot of
terrible.
like I've done a lot of service jobs, but I never did movie theaters. I have done
Fucking
pretty much everything else
terrible.
under the sun, but
I will sum it up. I worked there in the summer of 2015,
okay.
and the summer of 2015 had the anniversary of Back to the Future.
Oh no.
It had the Jurassic Park movie,
Mm-hmm.
Jurassic World, I think. It had Mad Max Fury Road, which was fine. It had Minions, and
No.
to this
Did you
day,
have
if
like
I
giant
hear,
cutouts of minions in the like
yeah,
theater?
but to this day, if I hear the song "They Call Me Mellow Yellow," I get
Oh.
angry.
Oh
I get angry
yeah. I
real
think
fast
everyone does a
because if
little
you can
bit.
clean theaters, you clean
Mm-hmm.
theaters after every single time they play that song in the credits.
Mm.
So 8 times a day, I would hear "They Call Me Mellow Yellow," doom, da doom,
Ugh.
and each
Like
time I'm just
seething.
um
Yeah.
Pitch Perfect came out while I was there.
Oh wow. God, 5 years
One of the
ago.
sequels.
Jesus
One of the sequels
Christ.
did. I think number two did.
Oh God.
And to top it all off, not get very gross, but Magic Mike XXL came
Oh
out while I was
no.
working there.
Yeah.
A lot of suburban housewives
Yeah,
went
I bet.
there to every showing,
Oh, I bet. You
and
poor
I don't like
souls.
thinking about it.
Yeah, just we just block it out. Yeah, good. I do
It's
that a
it's just
lot
like you
too.
think about it, you just do like the gray TV static.
Yeah. No, there's nothing there. It's just
Oh
empty.
yeah,
That folder's empty.
but yeah, but fucking awful.
Yeah. Yeah. I can super relate to that. Other. Okay. So we've got 10 minutes left. Let's do these last ones here. So what is the most like beat up or well loved TTRPG or board game that you still currently own? Because I've got a couple back here that are literally. It doesn't have to be your favorite, but like what has been the one that has seen the most play that you still currently own? Because I've got some like ones that are
Um,
held together by duct tape behind me.
This is going to sound very, very strange, but I have this thing from when I was a kid called Snail's Pace Race.
Oh my god, I love it already.
All it is it's a board game with like linear tracks, and you
Okay.
control one wooden cutout of a different color of snail,
So,
and you roll a six-sided die on your
okay.
turn, and you move your snail forward, and you repeat that until someone makes the finish line.
Can we bring back snail games? Why? I feel like board games are doing everything to try to find new and interesting themes. Has there been a snail game, chat? Tell me if there's been a snail game, because if not, I'm gonna make it. Um, that is adorable, and I love that so much. Oh my god, Max says I had this game too, so apparently, um,
Oh my God!
you weren't the only one
Yeah,
who had this snail game.
hell yeah!
um,
Yeah, I still have that. It's
oh,
put together still with Scotch tape from the '90s.
wow,
Like,
it's an artifact practically.
yeah, if I
um,
move it too much, it'll turn to dust.
yeah, yeah. All right, so the next one is I feel like it's time that we have this argument out in a public forum because we might as well.
Oh no.
What is it with you and the Legend of Mana being better than the Secret of Mana? Because I've gotten nothing but shit from you about this for about a year, and I explain. I won't say anything. I'll sit here. I'll listen. Explain it to me, because all I've ever gotten is angry all caps text from you with nothing backing it up, just like yelling at me. And I just need to know. Explain it to
So,
me
okay.
into chat.
I like Legend of Zelda. I like Legend of Mana purely because of my own aesthetic reasons,
Okay.
but because of how I prefer storytelling.
Mm.
Legend of Zelda is a very good example of a game refusing to teach you,
Mm.
a
Okay.
game refusing to hand you a story. If you play a JRPG, you can get a waypointer or a place to go to, or you get a
Mm-hmm.
key and it tells you where to go. And Legend of Mana refused to do that. You play as a character who is remembering the world. And
Mm-hmm.
in doing that, you go through quests, you go through storylines, and you get these different objects you place on a map to create new locations to explore and do quests in. And all the while, you are rebuilding the world as your character remembers it until finally you remember the penultimate goddess of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and you remember having to kill off her evil half. But at no point did it tell you this will push along the story. No one tells you this is the main quest, do this, and you push the main quest. No one tells
Mm.
you this is a side quest, doesn't push anything else.
Gotcha.
And the whole thing has four arcs to it, and you have to complete the first three in order to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
the first three all deal with different versions of love: romantic love,
Mm-hmm.
friendship love, familiar love. It tells the story of deeply flawed characters and how they went about their love, and how they can appear one way, but it's just their love pushing to be like that. You have someone who may appear to who is this holy knight who fights demons and can't possibly understand how a demon and a mortal woman can fall in love with each other. You have a man who loves his sister so much, but he is constantly pressured by the fact that he will always live in her shadow. So he pushes himself into darker means. All these different characters who go through different, very human ways of existing because of how their love pushes them, and how love isn't this inherently good thing. It can cause people to damage themselves or be inherently more and more flawed. And I will play a game and hear about how love will teach us the way, and I'll watch an after-school special about how like we're friends, Patrick, and nothing tells
I
me,
feel
hey,
attacked.
if you covet, and nothing never tells me like, hey,
Yeah.
if you covet something that someone else inherently has, you're going to destroy yourself.
Mm.
No one tells me how, hey, you can change yourself. Anyone can change themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Most people choose that. There's this quote from a guy. I looked up this quote before the interview today, just in case it came up. But there's one NPC who you meet in hell.
Okay.
Side character doesn't matter in the slightest to the story, but you talk to him, and he's a spirit in hell, so he deserves to be there. But he goes, "Say, you smell like blood. Did you just kill somebody? Hmm? I once killed someone when I was younger. I thought I was doing the right thing, but then I was cut down, betrayed by a friend. You may think you're right, but one day you might be killed too. As long as everyone thinks they're right, mankind will never change. Is that what you really want?"
I love that you had that prepared. Did you
And
did you
and
see
I'm
this
7
coming?
reading that, huh?
I said, did you see this confrontation coming?
I felt it in my bones, but also you texted me saying that you might talk about retro video games, and the only
That
video
makes
game I'll ever
sense.
talk to you about is
Is the
Legend of
Legend of
Mana.
Mana? Yeah.
Um, but its storytelling is so above and beyond what I see in a lot of games these days,
Yeah.
and it makes me very, very bored.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have seen through repetitions over and over in my life, and I constantly look for new ways people tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
And very few times do people tell a story in the way that Legend of Mana tells a story, where they refuse to tell you what the actual plot is.
Mm.
You actually have to think about it and form it for yourself as you experience it.
Yeah. Oh,
And
wow.
that's what I love most about Legend of Mana.
That was very, very well put. I really, yeah, no, that has contextualized the game in kind of a new light for me. Um, Kind of going off of that, there is another game that I want to talk to you about that I feel like correct me if I am misremembering this, but I believe the one thing that we agree on, not that I disagree with any of it you said. I'm just like a horribly nostalgic person, and I played Secret of Mana first. Um, is Final Fantasy IX being a really impactful game, and it was a really impactful game for me. And I believe I've read that it had a similar effect on you, and I kind of want to. I mean, I could talk about that game forever, but I want to pass it off to you, kind of, and just ask you what is it about the Final Fantasy IX that holds a special place in your heart? And is it for similar like storytelling reasons, like the Legend of Mana, or other reasons? Because I'm just interested because I love that game too.
So it's for a good reason, but a weird reason.
Okay.
When I was born, I had very, very weak muscles in my chest,
Okay.
to the point where without medication, my chest would have collapsed on itself
Oh
as
my
I got
God.
older.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So I was kind of born with a timer.
Mm-hmm.
But modern medicine took hold, and I got better and stronger.
Good.
If you look at my brothers, they're lanky compared to me,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm very bulky by height. But there's a character in there named Vivi,
Yep.
and if you haven't played this game from, you know, almost 2 decades ago, spoilers.
Play. First of all, play it and leave, and then go play it. I have like 3 copies. Ask me, and I'll lend you one because this game is really
Uh,
special to me, and you should play it.
but the nature of Vivi, in that he was born with a timer
Mm-hmm.
that he accepts and chooses to still keep going forward, meant a lot to me
Yeah.
as a kid.
Yeah. I will say just briefly that Vivi is also one of the reasons why I love that game so much, and I found that that's kind of a common thread. But it's interesting because we actually like that character for different reasons, which is very interesting. I've always related to the scene where Vivi sees like the other black mages that look just like him. And seeing that they're being used for like evil purposes, that for some reason has always stuck with me, about like you being more than like who you look like or what you come from.
Hmm.
That's always just stuck with me. And also that moment of realizing that maybe people you're related to, or what, I mean, they're not related. It's just they all look the same and they're all created for this evil purpose, and like recognizing that you can change that and be your own person despite like where you come from or whatever. I've just always loved Vivi. And I feel like that's a common thread. I think that people love Vivi, but it's interesting that we've both latched on to different aspects and different scenes in particular, different parts of his narrative that speak to us. So yeah, we're almost out of time. My last 2 questions that I've been trying to ask everyone is, do you have a favorite indie game? It could be a TTRPG, board game, video game that you've played recently that you've really loved, that you want to mention?
If I go over to my Steam list
Do
here,
it, yeah.
Raft.
Ooh,
There's
yeah,
a
I
game
haven't
called
played it yet.
Raft.
Yeah,
It is,
but
if
I've
when you
seen
first
it.
play it, you don't know what to do. It is very stressful because all of a sudden you have a shark attacking your boat.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Very stressful if you don't know what's going on the first time you play. But I've been playing it as of late, waiting for more releases coming out.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then my last question is, I don't know if this is a very helpful question, but just anything in particular that you'd like to plug, anything where asking just where can people find your work, where can they find you, any particular projects that you want to make sure people are aware of.
Sure. Well, Sina Una is out for pre-order. We're working on it right now, but any pre-order helps us, further the art budget. Um, I am working now with 2 Cent Gaming on a project called Dragonflight, where you play as dragons in 5th edition.
Ooh, wait, really?
Yeah,
That's so cool. Gosh, damn it!
yeah.
That's so cool. I've
Um,
learned a lot. This has been very very enlightening.
and then I'm working on a TTRPG interview book, interviewing
I
different
saw
people
that.
who
Yeah.
make RPG books. And while I'm not sharing my interview list right now, oh my God, did this blow up in my face? because I'm making this because I made a joke on Twitter, and I've
This
learned
is
not
a
to make jokes
trend
on
for you,
Twitter.
Paladin. This is you just at some point you got to stop being surprised by it. This is
People
how your
take
life
me
goes
too
now.
seriously. People take me too seriously.
Don't tell them that shit. It's a secret. Don't tell them.
No, like I have a golden skull for my icon all the time, and I write in proper sentences and grammar, and like that brings a different image than the image that I normally have though in real life.
Oh. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I had. Thank you so much for joining me, Paladin. This was very enlightening and this was just super fun to catch up and chat. I hope you enjoyed meeting Paladin if you hadn't met him before, or if you have already met him, learning some things you didn't know before. Thank you so much for being here, Paladin. We are going to go to a quick be right back screen, and then Max will be back interviewing Gather Round Gains, who made Someone Has Died. So we're gonna transition real quick, but all right, thank you so much, Paladin. Really appreciate it, and we will see you all in a minute. Oh, that was not a smooth transition. There we go.